big story here that's developing globally with stocks you may own. Business fallout over the Iran sanctions that kicked back in last night. It continues to trickle down at this hour. Take a look at these important names on your screen. Companies like Nestle, Daimler-Benz, and Total out of France. We are watching their stock very closely as President Trump warns that any company doing business with Tehran will be cut off from the U.S. financial system and targeted with other punishments. Daimler, the maker of Mercedes-Benz, has already dropped its plans to expand its Iran business until further notice. So they're in with the U.S. Total, a petroleum refining company, has said it will quit a multi-billion-dollar South Pars gas project in Iran if it cannot obtain a waiver from U.S. sanctions. And it probably won't. So let's bring in Ambassador Adam Ereli. He's the former U.S. ambassador to the Kingdom of Bahrain and former Deputy State Department spokesman. Also with us from London on the trading aspect of this, Jasper Lawler, London Capital Head of Research. Ambassador, to you first. Will these snapback sanctions returning to the pre-Iran nuclear deal work? Will they make Iran bend before it breaks?
Well, I think they already have. Look, even in the months since Trump announced that we were getting out of the nuclear deal and imposing sanctions, and he did that in May, we've seen the Iranian currency in free fall. We've seen protests throughout the country, including harsh criticism of the regime. So just the anticipation of sanctions has had a disastrous impact on the economy. Now that these sanctions are taking effect, I think you see European companies voting with their feet. They look at a small market in Iran, maybe $80 billion, versus a $2.4 trillion market in the United States. The choice is clear. They're getting out of Iran.
Yeah. And Jasper, the European Union companies, I think he's exactly right. They are voting not just with their feet, but with their pocketbook. They see the U.S. as the better market. But the European Union is saying it'll protect firms against the impact of sanctions. But where do you see any trades on these companies? If somebody refuses to comply with these sanctions, what happens to their stock, in your opinion?
Well, good evening from London. If one of these companies were to refuse to comply with the U.S. sanctions, there's a chance that they will be protected by new rules that the European Union are trying to institute to basically encourage these trade to continue with Iran.
Right.
But as your other guest indicated, it looks like these companies are voting with their feet already choosing to avoid that kind of situation. I think that probably these rules enforced by the EU are hard to actually implement, and so probably the reaction in the market would be for these shares to fall pretty sharply.
Gentlemen, do me a favor, if you will. I want to pivot. We're 2.5 minutes away from Tesla's shares resuming trading after they've been halted on news that Elon Musk would like to eventually take his electric vehicle company private. To you, Ambassador, this all began today when Saudi Arabia's sovereign fund, it was released to the markets that they've taken a stake in this. Now, in the Middle East, which is driven by oil, how interesting do you find it that Saudi Arabia is looking for the next big thing and realizing it's got to expand beyond its oil?
Well, I think that's hardly news. Remember, they had a huge deal with SoftBank a couple of years ago worth considerably more than $2 billion. And other countries in the Middle East have gone down the diversification road well in advance of Saudi Arabia. But it is, I think, representative and symptomatic of a growing trend. Two growing trends, actually. Number one, again, diversifying away from oil, looking for technology. But number two, very importantly, the Arabian Peninsula, not Iran, is where people are going to make money.
Isn't that interesting indeed? Jasper, 1 minute. We've got 1 minute and 10 seconds before shares will start trading once again. Give me your thought, because here's the latest tweet. Investor support to take Tesla private is confirmed, but the only reason, Elon's tweeting this, the only reason this is not certain is that it still needs to go to a shareholder vote. What do you think of the stock here?
Well, it looks like Elon's getting out ahead of the normal process here to try and get the shareholder approval. My feeling is that he's the man that's been driving this stock forward along. It's his story that he's telling. And I don't see any particular sign in the share price close up to the 2018 highs that people losing any less enthusiasm for Elon. So I think the default for shareholders is that they believe in Elon Musk, they believe in what he can do for Tesla. Hence, the shares probably push on to that price handle that he's mentioned in his tweet.